going to be 106 today. Not a day that Chip really likes. He prefers it in the 80s at the most. That's why he asked to go back in the car, but we dragged him out here to film this opening. You can see he's not really excited about it. We have the opportunity here today to show you some of the top blooming plants or flowers for summer. In Fresno or wherever you happen to be, these plants thrive in the summer and bloom like crazy. This garden's got great examples of Crape Myrtle, which perform very well in our hot, dry climate. They even do pretty well in hot, not so dry climates, but sometimes they'll get mildew. At this garden, we see the Indian tribe line of Crape Myrtles. The Indian tribe Crape Myrtles have those big plumes of flowers at the end of the branches, as opposed to other varieties of Crape Myrtle that have smaller flowers and more dispersed throughout the tree. They've got Tuscarora, which is that deep, almost like a watermelon red. You can see the kind of pinkish purple one called the Muskogee. And you can see the Natchez. Natchez is white. All of those tend to be large by a Crape Myrtle standard. You know, some Crape Myrtles don't get much more than 15 feet tall. The Indian tribe Crape Myrtles, most of them are actually good small shade trees because they get large, they bloom like crazy all through the summer, right up until we get frost, really. They're tremendously long-lasting in terms of bloom. So roses in general suffer in the summer, or even if they don't suffer, they don't bloom much when you have temperatures over 100 degrees. You can see at this garden a lot of Gourmet Popcorn, this low white landscape rose. It's essentially a landscape rose that just blooms like crazy even through hot weather, and then you can prune off the dead flowers and it just keeps blooming. So Gourmet Popcorn is showing really a tendency to bloom right through the hot weather, not as profusely as if it was less than 100, but pretty well, and it goes nicely with almost any other color because white is complementary and contrasting to any other perennials or annuals, and so it's a real useful plant that doesn't get too big, is easy to take care of, and just blooms right through the warm season. One of my favorites. Plumbago, you can get this deep dark color by getting cultivars like ones called Imperial Blue that tends to be darker than the ones here. This is more of a lightish bluish purplish, and this blooms like crazy right through the summer, late spring to summer, and then like many of the flowers we're talking about, cold weather impacts it, kind of goes into a dormancy, even drops a lot of the leaves. Usually people cut it back, and then it just explodes with leaves and flowers. Long blooming plant that also goes into that category of actually liking heat and liking the summer, even over 100 degrees, whereas you can see in this garden it's behind some roses, and the roses you can see have seen better days because they don't really like this weather and they're going into a dormancy in terms of bloom. So maybe the easiest, dependable summer blooming perennial is Lantana. Grows like crazy when it gets hot, spreads like crazy, fills in, and you almost never see Lantana without a lot of flowers on it in the summer. In terms of a reliable bloomer, there isn't a better one, and probably don't even need to worry that much about the health of your soil. When it gets hot, it'll spread and grow and bloom. So the most common colors of Lantana are yellow, purple, and white. There's also ones that have a mixture of colors, and you can get Lantana that has some orange and red and yellow all together on the same blooms. She's got some great Buddleias here, or butterfly bush, semi-dormant in the winter and then blooms like crazy. One variety called Pugster, it's a dwarf form of Buddleia. A regular Buddleia or butterfly bush gets huge and kind of out of control once it gets hot, but it's an example of a plant that likes heat and blooms like crazy. So you can see this one here is just blooming beautifully. Couldn't bloom any better. It likes this 100-degree temperature, and then if you want really small ones, you can get the Pugster variety that have really interesting little compact flowers on it. Hard to find in our area, but very unique and very well adapted to hot summer temperatures. Another tough summer blooming is Society Garlic. takes heat well and takes high temperatures well, and comes in a basic green or a variegated leaf, and has this spike of bluish purple flower, and very tough and doesn't need a whole lot of water, and a nice complementary plant to other blooming plants you can see in this garden. It's used with roses and doesn't get too big, so it's kind of a border plant, maybe a foreground plant where larger things behind it are blooming. Society garlic is really tough and easy to grow and a useful plant. Can you look up the botanical name of?
I see that one all over
this
area.
It's all over Fresno, but I'm just blanking on the botanical name. Society garlic botanical name is Tulbagia violacea, and some people call it Tulbagia, or in this case variegated Tulbagia, or society garlic. Both are kind of used interchangeably. So Agapanthus is a popular summer blooming plant that tends to get going right around the beginning of June in our climate, and then blooms for quite a while through the early summer part of the season. And the traditional Agapanthus, which comes in different sizes, ones like Queen Anne and Peter Pan and just straight Agapanthus africanus, have kind of a light bluish flower, which you can see. And then there's been recent introductions focusing on more vibrant colors. One's called Storm Cloud, and there are some other varieties that have that deep blue bloom. Usually those bloom a little later in the year. She has a few here. I'm not sure if these are Storm Cloud or something like Storm Cloud. Agapanthus is a perennial that does well in Fresno. She's used a lot of them in this garden. You can see in all different colors. Got a very distinctive coneflower shape, hence the common name coneflower. Although I sometimes have a hard time telling the difference between Rudbeckia and Echinacea. You can see the distinction here. Mainly it's in the flower, and she has some Rudbeckia also. And this is like a part of a perennial garden, and you can see examples of how to use it. It's used throughout this garden as a backdrop to other blooming things. Can bloom through hot weather, obviously blooms in the spring, and both of them, Echinacea and Rudbeckia, do well right through these hot seasons, again benefited by rich soil full of microbial life. She's got a great stand of zinnias here, and zinnias are not always real reliable in real hot weather. They tend to, from my experience, take a little more water to get going and get blooming. You can see these are blooming like crazy and doing fantastic. This rich soil that we've created with the addition of all kinds of food for microbes and microbes themselves, and we've also got plenty of macronutrients here, and that has created a soil environment where these zinnias are performing beautifully and just blooming, blooming, blooming right through the warm season with no sign of any abatement about to happen. Once we start getting frost in October, November, and December, then they die off and they're usually removed. But through the warm season, very reliable, very colorful, comes in different sizes, tall ones and short ones. These are a lower variety that are just looking spectacular right now. Salvia is a very reliable bloomer and available in many different species, and some are perennials that just bloom like crazy. They almost all get impacted by cold weather pretty dramatically. There's salvia that's only an annual that grows in our area, and then there's several varieties that are perennials, and all characterized by this deep, vibrant bluish purple flower that's a great attractant for pollinators and hummingbirds and all types of desired wildlife like that. There's a lot of perennial salvias that look similar. We believe this one is May Night, so you can check that one out if you like the specific color of this. You know, there's a few plants that seem to almost do better the hotter it is. Salvia is one of them. There's not that many. Most plants would prefer a little bit of shade on our hottest days. I've been dealing with hot summers like this. We're in our 43rd year, so we've gotten to where we've come up with a protocol of how to best allow plants to thrive during hot weather. It's like turning on a light switch. All of a sudden we're lighting up this soil with all kinds of beneficial complex life, which impacts its ability to help all your plants during hot weather. Daylilies bloom great in the spring in Fresno and usually pretty good in the fall, not in the winter. Many of the daylilies even get impacted by frost, and usually not in the summer. It's kind of like a rose in that they don't like real hot temperatures for blooming. We're happy if we can get them just to subsist and persist through hot temperatures. But you can see some here are still blooming. Again, we credit that to the richness of the soil. Difficult to have daylilies look good when it's 100 degrees, and unusual for them to be blooming at all. They come in many colors. You can even get unexpected colors. There's one that they promote as black, which isn't too appealing to me, but they've tried to hybridize many different colors of daylilies, and all of them tend to reseed during real hot weather. So we're showing you a few here that seem to be doing pretty well through the summer. This garden has some really spectacular hydrangeas, but they just finished their beautiful bloom, and you can see these are just finishing, and so that they're a little underwhelming right now, but they give you a sense of what they look like. And we can get more bloom in the summer. We'll cut off the spent flowers and we'll get another bloom, but they definitely bloom in the spring. You can control the color of the bloom by manipulating the pH of the soil, and you can go from pink to blue depending on if you make it more acid or more alkaline. Or there are some beautiful white ones that you can rely on being white without trying to control the pH. It's a spectacular summer flower, but early summer part for these is done. We'll get some more bloom a little later, but you can see how great these look. We just missed it. We apologize. We did another video at this garden where we focused on spring flowers, and you can watch it right here. It's a different season, but some of the same principles apply. Different plants because of the distinction between spring and summer. You can look us up on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter, and even TikTok. Now, I haven't figured out what that is yet, so I'm not able to watch it, but maybe you know what it is and you can watch us on TikTok. What do we have on there? I'm told we have fun videos. I'm anxious to watch a couple of fun videos and see what's on there.